Hi, I'm Meredith Curtis, and I'm so excited to be with you today. I have my friend Laura Nolette with me. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody.
Laura is a computer whiz. I've just always admired that about her, and she's been such a blessing to me, to my husband with the church, and to me personally. We are actually business partners with Powerline Productions. And so, Laura, you're teaching a computer class
Mhm.
at True North. I would love to hear about that, what you're teaching, what's involved, and all of that.
Sure. I call it Introduction to Computer Science or Computer Science 101. And we kind of go into a lot of basic things that every student really should know about using a computer. It helps them to move around the computer better, to understand their computer better, to be able to find what they need whenever they need it, especially during the school years. It hopefully helps the students get through all of their schoolwork much better.
That's so awesome. Now, when we were talking earlier, and I remember my dad was a systems analyst and he tried to explain things to me sometimes, but computers think very differently than we do, don't they?
They do.
So tell me about that.
Well, each computer basically plays the fastest game of 20 questions you've ever imagined. And so, because everything that a computer does has to be boiled down to yes and no questions. No maybes, no hints, just yes or no questions. And so we've all seen movies or TV shows where they represent the computer writing as a bunch of zeros and ones. And that's because the computers do operate that way. They think about yes or no, on or off, zero or one.
That is so amazing. So I am sure that teenagers could learn to think in terms of that, to think like a computer much easier than me, who doesn't at all think like a computer. But tell me how you teach them how to do that.
Well, honestly, not all teenagers do. Some do more than others. I have people in my family who really do think just like a computer. And so you have to be very literal and very precise with them. And for people like them, it's very easy to understand this. People who are more creative, who live in the more gray world, as some would say, instead of black and white. Um, it does take a little more creativity to explain to them and help them to understand. I actually play 20 questions with my students
Oh,
to
cool.
kind of get them to that stage where they can understand. And we talk about it, we play games, I demonstrate things, and these are the different ways that you can explain that. When they start to understand that computers, I start my course with a brief history of computers.
Oh, cool.
And when you start understanding some of the earliest computers were actually switches that somebody had to
Mm,
flip a switch or turn a
wow.
dial to the on or off position, it started making more sense to them that why the computers have to work the way they do. And so on and off is a universal concept. That's part of the reason why computers work that way, because it's not dependent upon language or culture. It's just
Interesting.
universal. Even an alien, if there were aliens, would
No
be able to
aliens.
control the same thing. But because we humans communicate in languages, it really is beyond reasonable to program with all those zeros and ones. And so different people in the computer industry over the years have written programs that can communicate with the computer from whatever language to the computer to make like the
Gotcha.
translations of it. What's really neat in the history of computers, when we look at that, I found out that the person who is attributed with being the first computer programmer was, I think it was Lord Byron's daughter. And so here,
No
yeah, yeah.
way.
So
That's
this
so
famous
cool.
literary figure gave
Wow.
birth to a computer geek.
That is
So,
so cool. I love
yeah.
that.
And one of the first computers, it's not really a computer, but it was that line of thinking, was the jacquard loom. If you've ever heard of a jacquard
Mm,
fabric, those are
yes,
fabrics that have these beautiful patterns or
right.
sceneries woven right into them. Well, Jaggard, it was a person, and he actually invented the punch card system to control the loom. So when the punch card, and it really was a like a piece of wood with holes punched through it, when it would be fed into the machine, the loom would sit in one position, and when the next card would get put in, little pegs would push through the holes, and it would move things on the loom, so the loom would weave differently.
That's so
So
cool.
that's how they
I
make those.
remember being a little girl going to work with my dad, and there was a big computer room, and it was freezing cold.
Oh yeah,
Freezing cold.
yeah.
And you would put those cards in,
My dad
and
worked at one of those too. Yeah. And
yeah.
so I did you turn those cards into ornaments and Christmas tree ornaments and
Oh,
things
we
like
did
that? Oh
so
yeah.
many
Yeah.
crafts with them.
Paper
Yeah.
dolls.
And then I loved the paper that just went on and
Yeah.
on and on. You could do so timelines. They were perfect for
Yeah.
timelines
Yeah.
in the early homeschooling days.
Because the printers back in the 70s and 80s, they had no way of feeding the paper except for these rows of holes on the sides that would little
Right.
pinwheels would spin around and advance the paper, and so the papers were all attached to one another, so we got
Cool.
these big banner papers.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Now, besides learning how computers work and the history and then thinking like a computer,
Mhm.
are there any more everyday kind of things that they learn in your class?
Well, there are. In computers, everything is run on files. And so we talk about how there are different kinds of files in computers, and things like there's a desktop on a computer and there's a desktop in your in your school room,
Yes.
but they mean different things. And there's different kinds of storage within a computer.
Mm,
And so we talk about that. Some things you store on your computer stay forever, whether you plug the computer in or
gotcha.
unplug it. And but there are other things that go away when you unplug or turn off a computer.
Okay.
So we talk about all those different kinds of differences and the different kinds of files, where they would sit on a computer, and how you would use them. We
Gotcha.
do get into how to organize your files on your computer, and it actually the students who really take it in and take it to heart and work at it are finding it's helping them with their organizational skills in other areas of
That's
life.
great.
So they're thinking about, well, if we put our music all in this place, do I want to sort my music according to who the artist is, or do I just want a big pile of music with all the titles?
Interesting.
And things like that. So I talk to them about trying to get organized and how to organize the files on your computer. So I mean, you've known me for years, and you know that I've got all these folders for all of my pictures, and I have a lot of
Yes.
pictures.
Yes, you do.
And um, so I put them in folders based on who's involved in the picture,
Mm,
or when the picture was taken and things like that. Or if I've used it for a project,
gotcha.
it might be filed that way. So I talked to them about all these different ways that you can think about organizing your computer files.
Gotcha.
And so it gets them thinking about organization.
That is really cool. Now, what about learning to use Word and Office? Do you talk about that too?
I do, and not everybody knows what that is, but there's a whole, they call it a suite of apps or applications or programs. But these suites of Office applications, there's a bunch of different ones that you can use. And they are all the different kinds of programs that you would typically need to use in an office setting
Right.
or in a school setting. So,
School too. Yeah.
yeah, if you're writing a paper or a research paper or a book, you're going to want to use something called a word processor. And Microsoft, you mentioned Word. Microsoft has a suite, they call it Microsoft Office, and
Gotcha.
it has the word processor they call Word. Um, Apple products, they have their own, and they call it Pages. And you can go on to online to Google, and they have their own, and it's free. And the Apple one is free too. And Google calls it Docs, Google Docs.
Google Docs.
Right.
Right. Some of
And
my students use that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but there's also something called a spreadsheet that is great for managing numbers. So, Accountants use it. I've
Right.
used it to keep track of my cholesterol when I was trying to work on that, or
Oh,
my
that's
weight,
cool.
things like that. I've even used it for Christmas lists. And
Oh,
so
that's a great
I keep track of
idea.
who I need
That's
to
a
buy
great
for, how much
idea.
budget I have for it, and then how much I spent and when the deliveries are coming. Anyway, it's charts. It's lots and lots of charts with lots and lots of equations that you can use if you have to do calculations. And Microsoft has Excel, Google has Sheets,
Okay.
and Apple has, they may call it Sheets also. I've gone blank on the name of it. But anyway, there's other brands out there too. There's LibreOffice that's
Oh, that's
free.
cool.
And then there's another company, CorelDRAW, actually has a whole suite of Office applications too. But I actually, in my class, I spend half the year telling them how to use these apps for projects that they might use for class. I didn't mention it yet, but there's a presentation software in all of these apps. That's for slideshows.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
PowerPoint is the Microsoft version of it, or Slides is the Google Slides, and then Apple has, they call it Keynote, as in keynote speaker.
Oh,
And
that's really
yeah, isn't
neat.
that cute? And so we spend half the school year going over all the things you'd know. How do you create a Word document, a word processor document? How do you put pictures in it when you want to? How do you put footnotes in, or a table of contents in? How do you have headers and footers? The things that appear at the top of every page or the bottom of every page. How do you put page numbers in? And
Well,
then, yeah, we do the
that
same kinds of things with spreadsheets and with
that
presentations.
is such a blessing because I mean, it seems like kids learn computer stuff quickly, but not necessarily the computer stuff they need for life and school.
True.
So, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And Laura's writing a book, and it should be out this summer, maybe
Yeah, it should
this
be. It's in
summer. And
editing
tell
now.
us the name of the book.
Um, I believe it's Introduction to Computer Science. Yeah,
Introduction to Computer Science.
yeah,
And that is also the name of your course.
right.
And Laura teaches that at True North Homeschool Academy. And stay tuned at powerlineprod.com to find out when her book is for sale.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited that you can be with us. God bless you.